You're listening to Music Tectonics.
Welcome back to Music Tectonics, where we go beneath the surface of music and tech. I'm your host, Dimitri Vitsa. I'm also the founder and CEO of Rock, Paper, Scissors, the PR firm that specializes in music and technology. And at Music Tectonics, we cover a wide range of topics about innovation and seismic shifts in the music industry, much with a tech focus, although not only. And we do a lot on the recorded side of the business. And I always want to be doing more on the live side. So we've done a lot on live streaming on the podcast since this year, since there hasn't been much in the way of in real life concerts happening. But I'm really excited today because we get to dig in a little bit more on the live side, and particularly on the ticketing aspect. Today, I've got with me Lawrence Peryer. He is the Chief Revenue Officer at Lyte. How you doing, Lawrence?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's so fun to talk to you.
Yeah, I mean, we've known each other for quite a long time. You've been an independent producer and consultant of projects for a couple of decades, and you also have a past at Amazon, Warner Music Group, Live Nation, and even companies that had the word CD in their names. You've been in it for quite a while.
I have, yeah. I have. I'm an elder statesman. Who would have thought? Who would have thought?
It just creeps up on you, man, doesn't it?
That's right.
So we'll talk a little bit about your background, but just so we get off on the right foot with our audience here, what is Lyte? Lyte, right? Tell us about the company.
Yeah, so much prefer to talk about Lyte than me, so thank you. Lyte is what I like to call the product development company for live entertainment. And behind that pithy one-liner, what it really means is that we sort of have this mission of making it easier, more fair, more equitable for people to attend more of the live events that they're passionate about. That's sort of what we're trying to do for fans, make it easier to access tickets. And for the risk takers on a show, be that the artist or the promoter or the venue, we're trying to make sure that they have full rooms and that they are maximizing not only their revenue opportunities, but that they are owning and controlling more of the outcome around the event that they took risk on, so that they're capturing customer data, they're capturing revenue, they're providing the fan experience that they want to deliver to their patrons so that they can build loyalty and build in-venue spend. So we're really speaking to those two constituents, fans and risk takers.
Got it. And so my understanding is that Lyte came into being to help counteract the ticket scalping market. Is that correct?
Yeah, let me parse that a little bit.
Okay.
So Lyte was founded by our CEO, a gentleman named Ant Taylor. And Ant comes from the ad tech world. And he was part of a company called Right Media, which was sold to Yahoo. And Ant spent a lot of time thinking about and working on yield management, dynamic pricing, in the advertising, online advertising market space. Mm-hmm. And in addition to that, he was a college athlete at Princeton. He played basketball. And those two strands came together where after he did his time at Yahoo, he was on a bucket list trip to the Olympics in 2012 in London. And if anybody listening recalls what the story was out of London that first week, it was that the tickets for the Olympics sold out lightning fast, and there weren't really any tickets on the streets, but the venues were all half empty, to the point where like Costas was mentioning it on air. Like it was a very big part of the week one story of those Olympics.
Wow.
Like what's going on? Where did all these tickets go? And so Ant was making his way to the beach volleyball tournament, and they had built a venue outside of 10 Downing. And it was, as you would imagine, like walking up to the venue, there's people wrapped in the flags of their country, fingers up looking for tickets, nothing on the streets. He gets inside and there's all these pockets of empty seats. And, it brought out sort of that feeling of like, this is the pinnacle of these kids' careers to date. Where is everybody? Mm-hmm. Why isn't there more cheering? Why isn't this place filled to the gills? And it got him thinking with his yield management sort of Princeton brain and his athlete's heart of like, what's going on here? What's wrong? where are all these tickets? Where are all these spectators? And he came home from those Olympics and really spent a few years with some data scientists and analysts, learning from the outside of the business what we were starting to learn from the inside, which is there were things going on in the secondary market. On sales were being attacked. There was automated activity around ticket buying and selling,
Right.
that was impacting who was getting tickets, how they were being sold, how they were being used. And that sort of kicked off the product development cycle at Lyte.
Gotcha. So noticing that experience and then digging in to see what was happening and how that was happening kind of became the origin story.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
who loses out the most from these scalpers? I mean, is it really on the fan audience side or is it more on the promoter side?
It's interesting because um, I'll start by saying, as in any ecosystem, sometimes there's a role for third-party ticket brokers,
Hmm.
and so Lyte is less about demonizing anybody. And I don't say that to be political. Like there are parts of the live entertainment business that have, I don't want to say come to rely, but have come to rely on the secondary market as part of their distribution strategy. Especially in sports, where there's so much inventory. And you can imagine like a Tuesday night game when the two teams are out of the running, regardless of the sport. Like that's going to be a hard ticket to sell at face value. And so there's all kinds of liquidation strategies that go on, and quite frankly, risk mitigation that goes on when the secondary comes in and buys a bunch of tickets. So there's a role in the live event ecosystem, or there has been to date. But in terms of who loses, um, for lack of a better way to say it, everybody. The fan certainly can lose when premium tickets get scooped up, or any tickets get scooped up very quickly, and they've lost the opportunity to get a ticket at a fair price. Um, the risk taker, the promoter or the venue, can lose when they've tied up capital not only in that show, but in their facility and in all their other parts of the patron experience, and they're not maximizing the revenue from that event. But I also think the talent loses, because if the venue isn't full, what a shitty experience to be the one
Right.
on stage who's trying to play to the rafters, and you're not getting that full engagement from a crowd. So there's a lot of people in the ecosystem who have a degraded experience, whether they know it or not, because of the
Yeah.
secondary market.
It's interesting the way that you describe it. It almost sounds like the secondary market evolved because the primary market wasn't able to manage dynamic pricing in a way that served all parties at once.
Yeah, it could be that that's part of it. I think when we talk about ticket scalpers and we talk about the secondary market, um, the phenomenon's really changed over the last 20 years, right? Like for any of us over a certain age, we can remember standing in line for tickets, sleeping out for tickets,
Hmm.
going to a show or an event, and there's sort of the guy on the corner as you walk up. Looking to sell tickets or even looking to buy your tickets, basically street activity,
Hmm.
um, localized, regionalized at most. Guy with an ad in the back of the local, independent weekly kind of thing. Um, Small business. Over the last 20 years or so, since the advent of StubHub and other online secondary marketplaces, some of the good that's come with that is that activities come off the street, and sort of, the sort of cliche of sunlight being a disinfectant,
Hmm.
making it safer, bringing an e-commerce ethos to some of that. But it's also created tremendous opportunities for the secondary market to exist at scale, and for third parties unaffiliated with the risk takers for events to aggregate demand information, pricing data, um, capture consumer information. Um, and so, did the primary create the secondary through a failure in pricing? Maybe, maybe. But I also think that it's been a lack of like product innovation as well. It's been a and too much of a commitment to old school business models and old school ways of doing things that have also created the opportunity.
Hmm. Gotcha. Yeah. All right. We'll get into a little bit more about where Lyte is right now, but let's talk about you. What's your role at Lyte?
So, I have the fancy chief revenue officer title.
Pretty fancy.
And what that means for us is, sales. So a team that goes out and signs event promoters, producers, venues, artist tours, does the sales and partnership deals with the people who we're going to bring our solutions to. And then there's also a corp dev, biz dev part of it. So some of our larger relationships with either, corporate promoters or teams or leagues, things of that nature, more strategic deals. And then there's some other partnership aspects of our company. We have a web of relationships with primary ticketing companies that we integrate with from sort of a supply chain point of view. So Lyte doesn't issue tickets. There's no Lyte app that you have to download. Or if you're a fan and you buy a ticket through any of the Lyte product solutions, you get the same ticket as somebody who purchased in the primary on sale. And that happens because of our integrations with primary ticketing companies. And so those partnerships and those supply chain relationships are within my group as well. But, at the end of the day, chief revenue officer means drive revenue, drive growth, keep hitting those year over year targets that keep everybody happy and bring our solutions to a broader market. So that's what I do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for explaining that. But can I ask you, in that technical sort of workflow, if the fan's not really interacting with Lyte, where does Lyte fit in to the actual ticket purchasing moment?
Oh, interesting. So I definitely did not say it articulately. If it leads you to believe that the fan doesn't integrate with or interact with Lyte, that's an amazing question, and reveals a lot about.
Sorry, I got it wrong.
No, I think I got it wrong. So I'll take you through just an example of how it works.
Okay,
so
cool.
You have a ticket to Coachella and you can no longer go. In the past, your options were, maybe tell your friends on Facebook, turn to your coworker, maybe go to Craigslist or go to StubHub. Now what you can do is you can go back to Coachella.com and click a link that says return my ticket. When you click that link, you're launching Lyte in the background. So there's an exchange, an official Coachella ticket exchange powered by Lyte on Coachella.com. And so by clicking that link, a few things happen. You launch the Lyte algorithm, and you have the opportunity to go through a return experience. So you enter in the barcode or whatever the unique identifier is on your ticket into a form, and that's Lyte. And Lyte talks to the primary ticketing system in the background. So through a series of API integrations, we look up your ticket, make sure it's real, verify what was paid for. A bunch of sort of supply chain mechanical things go on. And then we make you an offer for your ticket. Generally speaking, it's face plus fees. So we want to make you feel like you're returning your ticket, that you're made whole. And you accept the offer and you return your ticket. And now Lyte has your ticket. The other thing that's going on Coachella.com is there's a wait list. So when a price level for Coachella sells out or the whole event sells out, fans who missed out in the primary on sale can get on a wait list. And they've got their credit card on file with Lyte. They know the price they're going to pay. So we take the ticket you've returned and we fulfill it to the next person on the wait list. Mm-hmm. The act of fulfilling it to the person on the wait list is Lyte telling you, hey, Dimitri, you're going to Coachella now. Your ticket's been fulfilled. Can't wait to see you at the event. And then a few minutes later, you get another email from the primary ticketer, just as though you had bought the ticket during the primary on sale with your ticket. Mm-hmm. So your transaction is with Lyte, but your fulfillment is through the primary ticketing company.
Got it. And is that the only kind of role that Lyte plays in this, or are there other types of transactions besides the return, waiting list, refulfillment?
Yeah, internally we call that Lyte Classic. That was sort of the core. That's the business that got us here. Yeah, mm-hmm. was this idea of returnability, and that was our secondary market solution, right? Like by taking returns, we're keeping supply off of the secondary market. We're giving fans a better option than having to become amateur ticket scalpers. And by having the wait list, we're capturing the demand from the secondary market. Mm-hmm. And both of those things together keep the activity, the fan experience, the data, and the revenue in the official ecosystem of the event. So now you're coming to Coachella.com to buy and sell tickets throughout the whole campaign, not just Friday at 10 a.m. So
Right.
that was our sort of initial product. But now we've done lots of different things and offered lots of different sort of platform capabilities. The biggest of which right now that people are embracing is this notion of taking that waitlist technology and putting it out in front of the on sale. So you can now be a festival or an artist tour or a venue and say, we're going to have a show. Dimitri's band is going to play. Would you like to go? Get on the wait list. And we don't really have to tell you much else. It doesn't matter when Dimitri's band's going to play. It doesn't matter what day of the week.
Because the commitment's pretty light.
Yeah, it may not even matter the venue. You just know, I want to see Dimitri's band when they come to Indianapolis, so I'm going to get on the wait list. And if you know that you've now put down your credit card to make a reservation, you haven't been charged, but your card's on file, you know that when tickets become available, you're going to get fulfilled. But you also know that that reservation is cancelable, the ticket's returnable. We're basically giving you the opportunity to express your interest in Dimitri's band, and then move on with your life. You don't have to take Friday at 10 a.m. off from work or schedule your calls around it. Or, we're bringing a true e-commerce experience to ticketing. I always tell people, just because we have 25 years of tickets being sold online doesn't mean ticketing's been e-commerce. Like, the metaphor of a shopping cart never really existed. It was come in, grab as many tickets as you can, and get out before the bum rush of scalpers and other fans and everything else. This is meant to slow it down, create a better fan experience, but also allow the event promoter or the event producer to understand the demand profile. Who wants to come to my show? Where do they live? Where are they coming from? How many tickets do they want? Which price level do they care about? I can see the patterns and maybe who's the broker or who's the core fan. Geez, I can look up all this demand against my customer database. Maybe I can reward loyalty. Maybe I could prioritize the highest shopping cart because these people also added the poster or the t-shirt or the parking pass. So it's this attempt to not only quantify the demand and help me make more actionable or give me more actionable insights, but help me make better business decisions based on who I know wants to come to my shows.
Man, that waiting list concept is so simple and so elegant for solving this problem. It's once you say it, you're like, oh, of course, that's how you should handle that.
Yeah, it's funny when people experience it on the fan side, they want it. Like we have people email or come in through the support desk all the time who say, I got tickets to such and such festival or such and such show through Lyte. How come Lyte isn't turned on for this other show I'm interested in? Or why can't I return my ticket to so-and-so? I was able to do it somewhere else. Like, it's such an obvious consumer e-commerce experience. We're finally making concert tickets like anything else you'd buy. Easy to transfer, easy to return, easy to monetize, easy to de-risk yourself from your position, easy to buy.
Yeah.
Like a T-shirt, like anything else you'd buy online.
Let me ask you. So the waiting list portion of it is super interesting. I like the part that you said about it kind of slows down the process, gives you a chance to collect some data and make some business strategic decisions about each fan and each purchase and interaction. As a result of that gap that you're putting between the moment the waiting list starts getting collected versus the on sale moment, are you able to actually stop large secondary market purchases, automated purchases, and so forth as a result of that?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you slow it down, you have the opportunity to do that. It's an arms race, right? In online ticketing. And unfortunately, that arms race has typically come down to like a very specific moment in time. Friday at 10 a.m. It's ticket platform against the world, and real fans are coming in. Automated traffic's coming in. Hundreds of people that are paid to go buy tickets are coming in. And there's all this stuff that has to go on in real time, which quite honestly degrades the fan experience. Like tickets get carded and then uncarded, and you could come in at 10:03 and it's sold out, and come in at 10:05 and there's tickets available. Like, it's just a clunky experience. Or you find out after the fact, the ticket company does a bunch of scrubbing of the orders, and geez, as the promoter, you were sold out on Friday and now it's next Thursday, and you get the report and you say, you know what? These 500 orders were violating the ticket limit provisions, or this was a block of brokers. What do you want to do with these tickets? And it's like, I'm supposed to go back on sale. Like, what do you do? It's confounding. So yes, by slowing it down, it allows you to run whatever your broker mitigation strategies are before you fulfill. And quite honestly, you may have a scenario where you want to fulfill some of that inventory. But at the end of the day, at least you have the choice. You can decide who to put in what order, or decide not to have any order. But at least as the person who took the risk on the event, you have the choice.
Do some people in the secondary market hate what you guys do?
I don't know. I think probably you'd have to ask them.
That's fine.
Yeah,
I mean it's. I think what you're saying is you've shifted the power back to the risk taker, which is what's super interesting. And like you said, they could still choose to go through those secondary market brokers to fulfill hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of tickets if they want to or need to.
Yeah, I think the thing that's super interesting, and that we hope we're providing value to our clients with, is that, and this has been so surprising to me as I came into Lyte a few years ago. You know, when an event sells out, that could be a 500 seat club, or it could be a 80,000 seat stadium. When an event sells out, it's very rarely the case that there's only like 10 more people that wanted tickets. You know what I mean? It's we find that our wait lists have thousands of people. Like, there's not a demand problem. There's a supply problem. You know, and so there's always people on the wait list the day of the show. And that's the insight that we want to bring, or one of the insights that we want to bring to event producers, is like, in the past, they never really knew how many people were shut out.
Right.
They got some sort of some secondhand information when they looked at secondary activity. But when you have a wait list of people who've put their credit card down and who have said, if tickets become available, please sell me one, and that list is thousands of people long, you can start to do some really interesting things, whether that's have another night, have the band back in a few months, start to think about the venues you play next time. Like, it just gives you information that you can make better decisions around.
Right. So look, I asked you what your role was. I was about to ask you what your background was, and then I just went down the rabbit hole to ask more questions. I always want to understand the business strategy, but let's go back to you. Tell us a little bit more about your background. I kind of gave a laundry list of several household name companies and music tech that you've worked with, and a little bit about how those things led you to where you are today.
Wow. Okay. It's funny.
Where to start?
Yeah, I try to adhere to the rule that, like, each page of your resume is 10 years, and so I'm trying to flip back through a few pages here. But I mean, basically, you know, I got my start in the early mid 90s in online commerce, even sort of pre-web, like through the early online services, AOL, CompuServe. Oddly enough, I owned a bookstore, and I had a mail order catalog. And that's what originally got me in the direct-to-consumer business and in the mail order business. And just because I was somebody with a technology background, I brought my early businesses online. And like a lot of people in those early internet days, I became like the local guy who knew about the internet. And I started to make more money advising and consulting little local businesses than I did in my bookstore. And what happened was I wound up being introduced to the gentleman who was starting CD Universe, which was one of the early online music stores. And I went in-house there and, you know, helped him build the marketing and business development for CD Universe. And that basically meant a miniature version of my current job. It was helping him drive revenue. He was the tech brains behind the company, and he had fulfillment and operations and all that stuff. And my job was revenue. And that was really my start to what I would call like scaled e-commerce beyond my own sort of mom and pop version of the world. And that led me into the early online music space. So we did a lot of direct business with the early sort of, you can't see the air quotes, but the new media groups at all the labels, doing early online promotions, working with all those early tech companies like Liquid Audio and Real Audio, the sort of, the rogues gallery of companies that it's so fun actually sometimes to talk to some of the old timers and say, oh my God, I forgot about that company, or I forgot about that person. Where did they go? But my e-commerce orientation got me into the artist direct-to-consumer business very, very early on. So I worked at and ultimately ran a company called Ultrastar, which was co-founded by David Bowie. And we basically did all of David's online activity. So we ran BowieNet, his online service, his website, e-commerce, ticketing, and all the things we built for David became a platform that we then sold to other artists. And over the years, that was the Stones and Madonna and the Chili Peppers, just sort of a who's who of early mid-2000s artists. That company was acquired by a gentleman named Michael Cole, who was one of the biggest concert promoters in the world. He sort of invented the global touring business with the Stones and U2 and Madonna, a bunch of other artists. Michael sold Ultrastar and a lot of his other holdings, a merch company, a VIP ticketing company, his promotions company, to Live Nation. And he became the chairman of Live Nation. And his family of companies became the group within Live Nation that did all the early 360 deals. So we signed Madonna and Jay-Z and Nickelback and a bunch of other artists to those sort of groundbreaking multi-year, multi-cycle deals, where Live Nation became the company that did everything for those artists, not only their tours, but their merch and their websites and VIP, and basically monetized the artist's entire career in partnership. And that model wound up being in various forms, really a model that the major record labels then started to embrace. So if you wanted to sign a deal, say with Warner Music, you were signing 360 deals. That sort of is what I wound up building within Warner Music. Was they were signing all these rights, but they didn't have necessarily all the infrastructure to exploit the rights. So each label in each territory around the world had its own e-commerce platform, its own merch company. Like they were catching up to exploit the rights they were aggregating. And so I came in and built a centralized team within WIA at Warner Music, within the distribution company, that built the platforms and the best practices and all the capabilities around managing and operating all those rights businesses. So we had a merch division, a ticketing division, a VIP division, a fan club, artist websites, CRM, e-commerce, and that group still exists today and sits in the center and globally manages all those artist campaigns. So that's a slice of sort of who I am and what I do. But my background, or the best way to kind of summarize what I do, is really about using technology to connect artists and fans. That's sort of how that's my self-image.
Yeah. Hey, well, you're on the right podcast then. It sure sounds like those experiences leading up to and at Live Nation and at Warner really gave you a 360 view on what kind of the context of what you're working in now at Lyte. So makes a ton of sense of how you got to where you are. Let's go back to Lyte. How much traction has Lyte gotten, let's say, prior to the pandemic of 2020? Because we'll talk about what's been going on now, but where is the business in its maturation?
Yeah. So before the pandemic, we had last summer had closed our Series A financing. We'd been very capital efficient before that. We were basically friends and family, some angel investment, but we had really sort of lasted quite a while by being capital efficient and funding through operations. So last summer we closed our Series A. We were on a sort of business plan trajectory that would have had us, I forget now because this year has just been so crazy, but I think we would have been approaching our Series B around now. I think I don't remember, to be honest with you, but pre-pandemic we were a Series A company, high growth trajectory. Since the pandemic, we actually closed a very significant up round Series B, um, uh, you know, high multiple on our Series A valuation, and significant amount of new capital. So, um, sorry, I kind of skipped ahead and answered the second part of your question.
That's okay. Yeah. And let's talk about how the business has been affected by COVID-19. What's changed?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I mean, everything came to a screeching halt, right?
Well, that's the interesting thing is that it turns out that a platform that's built to help make life easier for fans to buy and sell and exchange and return tickets was very well suited for the pandemic and this sort of time of uncertainty. And so for Lyte, we've almost never been busier.
Wow.
We've been very lucky. And with very minor tweaks and adaptations, we were able to take our platform and really open up a whole nother way to serve our clients. So I'll sort of take a step back and say when the pandemic hit, we knew intuitively that we had some solutions we could take to market. But what we decided was basically Ant said to us, let's go to our clients and ask them the thing they're most afraid of and see if we could help them with that. And first of all, that was an incredibly emotionally intelligent response. So we didn't go to the market and say, we're here to save the day. We tried to put ourselves in a position of service.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that a lot of our clients and frankly the live event industry was afraid of was what felt like the looming onslaught of customer returns and all the cash that was going to go back out the door.
Right.
And in the live event business, a lot of times you're spending your deferred revenue on your operations. So cash crunch is a very real thing when you start to have to return tickets at scale. And so we adapted the product to try to help give fans choices other than just taking their money back. And that's manifested in things like if a festival postponed or canceled for 2020, we could tell you now have a ticket for 2021 if you want. Right. So keep your ticket. We're going to honor you next year. Or you could exchange your ticket for a different event. Or you could have credit in the online store, or all kinds of just any one of them were simple, but in aggregate, they were an incredibly powerful suite of options we were able to give fans who may not need or want their money back yet, give them a way to stay in their position so that the event holder could keep the cash. Because here's the thing, it's so little talked about during the pandemic. In a lot of ways, consumer demand never died. We have events where the wait list for 2021 is through the roof. Like we probably won't get enough 2021 supply to fulfill all the demand. Part of that is if I knew I wanted to go to Coachella this year, before I even knew the lineup, chances are I want to go next year because I know Golden Voice is going to put on an amazing event. And yes, the lineup's important, but I'm going to Coachella, man. Like it's spring break and I'm going to Coachella and I can't wait to go. Part of it is we get this feedback from customers. Buying those tickets or staying on that wait list, it's a vote of hope with your pocketbook. And that's not trivial. People want something to look forward to. They want to be able to look forward to the end of this situation.
Yes.
And if I say, man, I'm going to Coachella next year, whether it's in April, June, or next September, but I'm going to Coachella, it's something to look forward to. And people need and want that right now. So if you're one of those people who is in that unfortunate situation of you've lost your job or you've taken a really bad hit financially and you need your money back, by all means, we want to make it easy for you to get your money back. But if you don't need your money back and you want to let it ride, or you want the collectible, the piece of memorabilia, you want to have some fun, we can give you that experience too. And that's been incredibly powerful. It's kept refund rates very low. We think it's kept some of our partners in a much more liquid position. And it's given us, frankly, a sense of usefulness in a very difficult time. So that's what we've been up to.
So interesting. You can't predict what would have happened if somebody were to say, oh, this pandemic's going to happen. You can't predict like that you could have fulfilled that need in that way. It's super smart thinking on the part of your company, but also just the psychology of what it's like to experience this is would have been very hard to project in advance.
I think that's a strong point. I think if you told us this was coming and we had to plan for it, we may have done what a lot of other companies have done. We might have said, all right, let's go into survival mode. Let's cut down OpEx to as slim as possible and let's just ride it out. But, it's interesting. I'll tell you one quick anecdote. The last time we were together as an executive team, the last time I saw my peers on the executive team was the first week of March. And we had a 2-day offsite basically with a coach, but we initiated this program for all of us, and it had to do with basically how we get alignment as a team and how we interact with each other, how we communicate better. And as you might imagine, a lot of that had to do with empathy. And the fact that we ended those 2-day sessions and then went home into this really shaped how Lyte survived, because we spoke to each other differently. We spoke to our employees and our clients differently. That was, I think that was the differentiator. Certainly our products, certainly we like to be clever people and solution oriented, but we were prepared to lead with, our hearts and our minds. And I think that made a big difference.
It really comes out in how you describe it. It really sounds like the core response was to think about giving options to the customer, the person who purchased the ticket, and really making them feel like they have a choice as opposed to a less bad experience, which is the way I think a lot of this stuff gets tackled.
Yeah. I think feeling some sense of agency in an otherwise very powerless situation, it's important.
Yeah. Hey, in all this conversation about the response to the pandemic, everywhere else in the live music world, it's a conversation about live streaming. We haven't talked about that. Have you guys done anything in that realm?
Not commercially. Not yet, although we've done a lot internally. We've hosted some live streams for our employees and actually had a lot of fun doing that. But no, the conversations we've had around live streaming have had more to do in scenarios where there's for lack of a better way to say it, some created scarcity. So you can imagine a scenario where if an artist is going to do a live stream and it's basically open to everybody and there's no capacity limits, they might want to let 50 people into a sound check or into a virtual meet and greet. And we've talked about scenarios where we could ticket that stuff, or we could work with the platform on that stuff so that we could create a market around around the limited quantity of availability. Or using our demand aggregation tools, there might be 1,000 people who want to get into that virtual meet and greet. Let's help understand that demand in advance, and then maybe you'll do 5 more events with different meet and greets. But so we've got the product application ideas, but we've really been focused on this, getting the core live business back up on its feet, using our demand aggregation tools in advance of next year. So we have a bunch of campaigns that are up right now with ambiguous situations. So by that, I mean artist tours that we're taking reservations for which it's only cities. There's no dates, no venues, no lineups beyond the headliner. Festivals that are doing the same thing. We're not dismissive of the live streaming space at all, but we think it's pretty well covered by other folks. We're really trying to get the live, the physical live space back up and running.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So I like to ask podcast guests what other music tech companies or trends that they find intriguing. Are there any other, not Lyte, other stuff that's things that you're interested in keeping an eye on?
Yeah, actually, I am interested in the live streaming space more from the point of view of, to use the old language, like the webcasting business, I always felt like, we were doing webcasts in the late 90s when it was shitty, clunky streaming technology and choppy frame rates and all that stuff. And I always felt like webcasting never found its killer app in music.
Mm-hmm.
That it was always a promotional thing. There could be a cool factor, but it was never really scalable or repeatable. And what's exciting to me now is to see what some of the platforms are doing around. Like, I think finally live streaming can become its own artistic medium. So in the same way that, radio didn't kill recorded music or TV didn't kill movies, I don't think live streaming kills physical live events. I just think it
Mm-hmm.
becomes its own. It's going to have its own tropes or its own sort of customs and formats. And I think there will become artists who really figure out how to make live streaming not just a camera on them while they sit there and play. Like, the one that everybody talked about early on was that BTS live stream that attracted 750,000 people or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not everything's going to be BTS level, but live streaming as a medium, I think, is going to be really interesting, and I'm hoping it's here to stay, and that artists figure out how to use it as a new creative format. So I love that.
Yeah, and I think people are being really creative that it's not necessarily the same experience for the performer or for the audience. And there's certain ways in which it can be more interactive and certain ways when it's maybe not more interactive, but lower friction. And then just a wide variety of ways that people are creating and experiencing it. So we've done several episodes with different live streaming platforms and had some sessions on that at the Music Tectonics conference earlier in the year. Hey, listen, this has been fun, Lawrence. I've really enjoyed it. Before you go, though, I would love to ask you a little bit about your own podcast, Spotlight On, kind of a play on the word spotlight, and light, again, is Lyte. What's the focus of the podcast, and why did you choose to launch it?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for asking about that. In the old days, when there used to be these things called offices that people congregated in to do work for money,
What?
yeah, we used to have this thing called an office. And the genesis of the podcast was that, in the course of my professional life, I get to do a lot of cool things, right? Like, let's just be honest about it. I get to go to shows. I get to work with artists. I get to hang out backstage. I get to go to cool business meetings and meet innovative thinkers. But at the end of the day, I don't do the really important work of Lyte. It's these offices full of our smart developers and program managers and finance people. They're doing the important work. And so the idea was, how do we give them access to the cool stuff? And so I used to do what we called a salon series, where we would have artists come into the office or business people, and I would interview them in front of the staff. And we really liked that content, and we were recording them and archiving them internally, using them in some social media campaigns. And we realized, like, wow, what if we could bring these people and their lives to everybody? And so the idea was, let's talk to people who have figured out a way to make a life in the creative fields and in entertainment, whether as talent or as business people or as support services. And learn a little bit about who they are and how they got to where they are today. Learn a little bit about the passions that drive them. So that's sort of our unique take on the podcast and what we think we have to offer. It's just an attempt to show people the personalities and the spirits behind entertainment.
Can you give us a few examples of recent episodes that our audience might like to check out?
Yeah, I mean, I'll highlight a few. I think our very first episode was a fun one, which was with Ben Lovett from Mumford & Sons. Ben was a great example because he's such a multifaceted person. He's, a founding member of Mumford & Sons, but he's also an executive in the live entertainment space. He owns something called the Venue Group. So he manages concert venues and builds and develops venues. He's an innovative thinker around live entertainment and business models. We actually have one launching Monday with another Dimitri, a guy named Dimitri Ehrlich, who is a songwriter. He wrote a book in the mid-'90s about the intersection of spirituality and music, where he interviewed Mick Jagger and Michael Franti and a bunch of other people around the role of spirituality in music. So sort of his story about how he got to be, he's both a journalist and a creative person and a business guy. I think that's going to be a great one that will launch next week. We had you on, and your story, you sort of encapsulated the spirit of the podcast really well, because you have this interesting, passion-filled life that is directly manifested in the work and the business work that you do. You're the representative podcast guest.
Wow, thanks. I hope that's good. I don't know.
Yeah,
that was fun. And actually, it's very different than this podcast. So folks that are listening to this one should check out that episode, because you asked me questions stuff I've never been recorded talking about my background, really deep dive into my whole past from childhood on through the career. And it was so much fun. So I'm glad we got to turn the tables and get you in here. And this has been a blast. I hope we get a chance to do it again sometime, maybe in person someday if we're allowed to see each other and get on planes and stuff. But this has been super inspirational and great to do a deep dive into Lyte in your career, Lawrence. Thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Dimitri, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the platform, and congratulations on all you've been doing, and keep up the fight, man.
Same to you. Thanks, Lawrence. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
And thank you for listening to the Music Tectonics podcast. Of course, hit subscribe on my podcast, on his podcast. Stay engaged. But also, did you know we've got an app? The Music Tectonics app is available in both the Apple iOS App Store as well as Google Play. Once you get there, you can introduce yourself and interact with everybody else. It's a community app. It's basically for asking each other questions, meeting people, networking. We post a lot of content there, a lot of news analysis, updates about what else is going on in the Music Tectonics community. In fact, we have a huge infusion of new members in the app right now because we just finished the annual Music Tectonics conference, and all of those folks are joining the app right now. So you should join too, and stay tuned because we'll have more episodes coming soon. Thanks so much.
You're listening to Music Tectonics.